Hello everyone, once again from the Kingdom of Thailand. Now back in either late October or early November, I made a video talking about Ben Shapiro's response to Kanye West's initial comments. And he said, well, that's all bad, but actually Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, they're actually far more anti-Semitic than Kanye because they are against the state of Israel. Now, if you thought this was just relegated to some sort of like political pundit like Ben Shapiro, this actually seems to be like a pretty common belief. And then at the end of last year, we got this article, Jenna Ortega versus Kanye. Whose anti-Semitic hate is worse? So the notion that anyone who opposes the state of Israel is worse than Kanye West has been a pretty popular take among supporters of Israel. And I want to actually dive into this article today, talk about the author's like general worldview in politics, which I find quite funny, and just respond to this and respond to how these types like try and bully people into not criticizing Israel. And fun story for people, right? So some of you know I used to be a journalist, first freelance, then working at an outlet that covered like the pharmaceutical industry. At the start of the pandemic, I wrote an article about how it was hard to get ventilators in Gaza because of Israel, right? And then I get some guy reading the article, writing a response to it, then messaging my boss, telling my boss that I'm a racist for writing this article because it reports on facts that make Israel look bad, right? Thankfully, my boss could see that the article I wrote wasn't racist. Loads of other outlets were reporting it. This guy had also written responses to like The Guardian, BBC, Pink News, all accusing them of anti-Semitism for reporting a similar story. But there are a lot of people who love to do this stuff either in their spare time or they're getting paid to do it. Now, the author in question doesn't seem to be someone who is paid to do this, which makes it even more sad. And it seems like he tried to be inflammatory, but his point remains sincere. So we're going to talk about all of this today. Please like the video, write your thoughts in the comments as well, and follow me on social media at the Kavernacle on Twitter and on Instagram. Instagram is where I'm posting all about my travels around Southeast Asia, and I post a lot of my story and I archive out all of the highlight reels on my profile page itself. So if you care about keeping up to date with me on my travels, go check out the Instagram page. Also just a better place to engage with me personally. And on that note, check out my Patreon. I'm trying to build as many $1 to $3 patrons as possible, and one of the benefits is getting access to exclusive travel content. And thankfully I released the Cambodia video last night, so me and my girlfriend talking about our experiences in Cambodia. And if you're a new patron as well, you also have the one about my month in Hanoi as well, so go check out both of them. I'm going to keep making these throughout the trip, so if you care about any of that stuff, consider becoming a patron. Other benefits include getting access to the Discord server and getting access to my Nintendo Switch friend code. Also, check out the subreddit and check out my second channel. All those links in the description. Before we get into this like totally trash article, which really represents a lot of like Zionist feelings towards legitimate criticism of Israel, I just outline what I think about Israel. You guys know what I think about Israel. I've made numerous videos on this. As someone whose family comes from a colonized nation as well, Ireland, whose family fought that colonization, and of course there's ongoing remnants of that with the state of Northern Ireland, I of course oppose the state of Israel. I see it as an apartheid state, as many do, as many legitimate organizations do as well. And I also see it as a settler colonial nation as well, which shares many similarities to other apartheid states like South Africa in the past, like the history of the US is very similar to Israel. And I think it should just be a Palestinian state for everyone in the region, a secular democracy. It's wishful thinking at this point, but that's what I want. And when I say the state of Israel isn't legitimate, that's not a comment on any of the people living there. I just want everyone in the region to live in a secular Palestinian state. The same way I want everyone in Ireland to live in a secular Irish state as well. And the problem that we're going to see in this article that we're going to read is even if you think Israel is a legitimate country, even if you think the original establishment of Israel in 1948 is legitimate, you cannot argue with the fact that Israel has constantly expanded its territory with settlers. Sure, it's fought many invasions and wars of aggression in the region as well, but also during relative peacetime, it's constantly expanded its territory through settlers, through invasion, through occupations and stuff like that. You cannot argue with the fact that even if you agreed with the formation of Israel, it is a colonial power in the region and it has colonized the region. That's an indisputable fact at this point. as is Israel being an apartheid state too. Like I said, I don't agree with the formation of Israel. I don't think Israel is a legitimate country, but even if you do, you have to admit these facts too. So thankfully, what we've been seeing lately is younger people not being brainwashed by this propaganda that Israel is the most democratic and free country in the Middle East and does nothing wrong. Palestinians bring it on themselves. Why can't they live in peace? A lot of new atheist types like to say this as well. Now, Jenna Ortega is, of course, the star of the new Wednesday Netflix show. She's become incredibly famous from starring in this recently. And she used to have a pinned tweet up, which she's removed the pin from, but it's still on her profile page. So this is what has caused a bit of controversy among pro-Israeli people. We must never give up on the people of Ukraine, Yemen, Palestine, Kashmir, Iraq, and Syria based. The list goes on, unfortunately. For anyone who is willing and wanting to contribute any way they can, I want to form a thread with information. Does anyone have resources, links they could add? And she puts a bunch of links for stuff about helping Ukrainians and people in Yemen. And then she also writes decolonize Palestine, linking to the decolonize Palestine website, and then also links the Palestine Children's Relief Fund. You guys might not say that's like, the most fervent support of Palestine, but I do respect it because she is a young person. She is a person with her whole career in front of her, and often being so outwardly political about controversial subjects like Israel is, especially in American politics. I respect her doing that, and I wish more people do that, and I wish more young people would do that. And thankfully, she seems to represent younger people who do feel they can talk about this stuff. And what I do love is pro-Israelis who are against the Russian occupation of Ukrainian territories because they never see the parallels. And that is what the author of this article is. His name is Daniel Margulis, and he wrote this article, Jenna Ortega vs. Kanye, whose anti-Semitic hate is worse. Now, you might have seen a lot of people react to this article and break it down. But what I thought would be fun is before we actually read it, let's get into the mindset of Dan himself, and this is how he describes himself on his personal blog. Now, he actually wrote this article on his personal blog first, and either pitched it to the Times of Israel or they reached out to him to feature it on their own website. So this is how Dan describes himself, and I do think this is very enlightening. So he says about his blog, "The reason for this site is simple. I wanted to have an outlet to write about the things that interest me." And he talks about his career, people he's interviewed and stuff. And he said he worked for years as a writer and editor for a moderately well-known progressive weekly. And then he goes on to say this: "Working for a progressive publication usually means that one is something of a progressive. And the same was true for me. What that term means now, however, is up for debate. I also have more frustration with much of the left than I had then. You will find some of that frustration here. While I still hold some views that might be considered progressive, others are no longer accepted as such. Some, such as the idea that crime deserves some form of punishment, have no home on the left. Others, such as the idea that while racism is still a problem that must be fought, America is not a fundamentally racist society that was founded because of slavery, and these ideas are slowly being pushed out of progressive circles. America isn't a fundamentally racist country." Isn't that amazing? Like, all the things we now know thanks to the internet and thanks to people being activists and spreading more awareness, and just people just generally listening to Black voices about how America is fundamentally racist, was built on slavery and the killings of basically all the Native Americans, is a massive colonial empire. This country is not fundamentally racist, despite still basically having a form of African American slavery in the private prison and the prisoner labor programs it enacts throughout the country. But this probably is not surprising for someone who's such a big pro-Israeli supporter. They seem to have terrible opinions about all this stuff. This guy also seems to be a neoconservative as well. So going on, he says, "Other ideas, such as the notion that America, despite its flaws, has been a unique force for good in the world." And it's unsurprising this guy lives in a fantasy land when the most evil country over the last 70 years, he says is a unique force for good in the world. I guess if you see force for good being I don't know, killing millions of people in Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos as a good thing, just for anti-communism, then yeah, maybe America is a unique force for good in the world. Or that Israel is a democratic ally worth defending, are increasingly finding no home on the socialist progressive left. On the national conservative right, at least they find a home on this page. Okay, so with that in mind, you're probably getting ready for an amazing article, but I just thought I'd glance at his Twitter, because people often write more personal things. He only has 600 followers. So then he posts his own article about Jenna Ortega. No one really cared about it back in the day. But then he has other takes like this. Instead of supporting people like Ilhan Omar, the RAC should support progressive legislators like Richie Torres. As progressive as Omar, nope. He's a friend of Israel and the Jewish community. Politically, he has no need to be. He's got a moral conviction. Also happy that Japan wants to become a military power again. We're going to get into his neoconservatism. Obviously, a massive Zelensky simp, which again, is funny when he's also so pro-Israeli. Like, although Zelensky is a massive Zionist himself, do you not see the parallels between what Russia is doing in Ukraine and what Israel is doing to Palestine? He wants John Bolton to be president. John Bolton, the architect of like multiple terrible, disastrous wars in the Middle East. John Bolton, massive neoconservative hawk, part of the two most disastrous American presidencies maybe ever, Donald Trump and George Bush. This is the guy lecturing us about Jenna Ortega being a racist. So Bolton is a far better candidate than Trump, Biden, or DeSantis. I met him a few times at the UN, and even then, when I was far more to the left and disagreed with much of what he said, he seemed a principled person. He's also not a culture warrior, which is a benefit. And also tweeting the lead of the ADL, calling out Rashida Tlaib. Great tweet calling out how offensive Tlaib is, as is her colleague Ilhan Omar. And if you guys want a deep dive into why the ADL is complete trash, I made a whole video about that, so go check that out. So there we have Daniel, the guy who thinks America isn't fundamentally racist, the guy who wants John Bolton to be president of the United States, the guy that is a massive, I guess, centrist, neoconservative. He wrote the article Jenna Ortega versus Kanye, whose hate is worse. So now you have a good frame of reference to how this guy views the world and why he would even like write this article in the first place. So now let's get into this article. I'm just going to stop where we think we should have a conversation on some of it. So let's get into this. I'm just going to skip the intro and start on this part. The anti-Semitism of the well-intentioned but uninformed. Kanye West understands anti-Semitism perfectly well. He hates Jews. Whatever else is going on in his mind, that is clear. Jenna Ortega presumably sincerely believes that anti-Semitism is evil, no less so than sexism, homophobia, hatred of Muslims, or other forms of xenophobia. The idea that she promotes anti-Jewish causes would likely make her shudder. Now keep that in mind, anti-Jewish causes apparently. So referencing the decolonized Palestine parts, decolonized. Was this a clumsy attempt to support a two-state solution? I clicked the link and I was horrified. I found a site that was extremist propaganda, advocating for the same position Hamas holds, abolition of the state of Israel, the world's only Jewish state, existing only in part of the land to which Jews are indigenous. This site tells a fictional story in which Jews from Europe were, and are, foreign invaders who violently displaced a pacifistic Palestinian people. I mean, even the skewed description he's given us isn't exactly wrong. Jews from Europe, along with Palestinian Jewish insurgents, did displace Palestinians violently, often just massacring civilians, but he seems to disagree with the entire framing of that. So in its washing section, the site lists all of the different ways in which every good thing Israel does is actually a Jew trick to oppress Palestinians more. Tel Aviv is one of the most LGBTQ-friendly cities in the world, pinkwashing. Israel is a world leader in environmental protections, greenwashing. The IDF routinely embarks on humanitarian missions to disaster zones, risking Israeli lives to save those of others in other countries around the world. Blue washing. Israel has ultra-progressive governing structures. Red washing. I love the way he frames this, right? Israel doing things well in some instances isn't what people are talking about. It's the fact that Israel literally makes it being more LGBT friendly than some other countries part of its marketing campaigns for tourism. I made a whole video on this. So while they're saying, come to Tel Aviv and you can be gay and go to the beach, Tel Aviv Pride, how amazing, while we all celebrate it on a beach, which is literally a Palestinian mass grave, right? That is what they're talking about. They're using this stuff to act like Israel is legitimate. They're using this stuff to gloss over Israeli war crimes and Israeli apartheid by saying, well, yeah, we're an apartheid state, but we're actually quite good for LGBT rights, so you can come here and celebrate on a beach that is a mass grave. People aren't mad that Israel has better LGBT rights than like other nations in the region. It literally does use it for pink washing the atrocities it commits pretty much every single day on Palestinians. So it goes on to say, the website does not criticize Israel. It doesn't call for a change of Israeli policy towards the Palestinian areas. It's not suggesting that all haste should be made in creating a Palestinian state alongside the Jewish one. No, the solution proposed by whoever is behind the Decolonized Palestine website is the destruction of the state of Israel, home to about half the world's Jewish population, the country to which Jews persecuted where they live flee. In the past years alone, tens of thousands fled France due to rising anti-Semitism, the only developed democratic state in the history of the world to have airlifted thousands of black refugees out of Africa into its borders. The decolonized people say should be destroyed. Now, he's purposely making this seem more inflammatory than it is. Of course, I'm not an idiot. I know there are Islamic extremist elements who want the destruction of Israel combined with basically killing like all Israeli people, right? When most people say, I want to get rid of the state of Israel, they don't mean all the people inside it. They mean the state, right? The same way I want to get rid of the state of Northern Ireland doesn't mean once that becomes part of the Republic of Ireland, I just want to get rid of all the people who live there. I want to get rid of all the Protestants. I want to get rid of all the people who descended from Scottish settlers and stuff like that. That's not what I mean. Sure, do some people mean that in regards to Israel-Palestine? Yes, they do. Does Jenna Ortega mean this? Does decolonize Palestine and advocating for a one-state solution necessarily mean this? And does it generally mean this in Western activist circles? No, it doesn't. And then he's also talking about the Ethiopian airlift. That's all well and good. When Israel airlifted Ethiopian Jews out of Ethiopia during conflict and famine in the 1980s, the problem being they would then go on to sterilize some Ethiopian Jewish women. And also Israel has a massive racism problem against darker skinned Jewish people like the Ethiopian Jews. They aren't treated as equals in Israeli society itself. He's complaining about people criticizing Israel when they do good things, but even he is mentioning a good thing and failing to actually tell us the reality of what being an Ethiopian Jew in Israel is actually like. Here's obviously like my major problem with this. So he goes on to say, this is anti-Semitism. According to all major Jewish organizations, both religious and secular, denying the right of Israel to exist is anti-Semitism. This is also true, as opinion polling shows, of the vast and overwhelming majority of Jewish people. As the late Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks put it, calling for the abolition of Israel is only the newest form of anti-Semitism. First, Jews were attacked for their religion, and then their race, and now for the state of Israel, the Jew of nations. Now, this framing is absolutely, like, insane, considering that hundreds of thousands of Jewish people fundamentally do not agree with the right to Israel existing, right? Not just they disagree with how they treat the Palestinians, they disagree with actually the state existing. And chief among them is some of the most religious Jewish people, Orthodox Jews. I was reading some quotes from Orthodox Jews who say it's like the work of the devil and stuff like that. And obviously there are a lot of problems with like strictly religious Jewish communities, and obviously because they are more conservative on a lot of issues. But is this guy going to tell me that Orthodox Jews are anti-Semitic because they think the state of Israel existing fundamentally goes against their religion, right? Is he seriously going to say this? Is he going to say every Jewish anti-Zionist is actually an anti-Semite because they're against Zionism? So to give another example, right, how many different like states around the world do we see that are really influenced by Islam? So we have Iran, which is controlled by the religious authority there. We have Saudi Arabia as well, which is a monarchy, which is in bed with a Wahhabi form of Islam. Can you imagine saying to a Muslim who opposes Saudi Arabia, you know, the country where the most religious sites in Islam, you know, exist, and then saying to them, oh, you hate Muslims because you're against the Saudis. You hate Muslims because you're against Iran. You hate Muslims because you're against this insurgent group which claims to fight for Islam. Can you imagine that logic? I apply that logic to what he's saying here, right? Orthodox Jews who are against the state of Israel even existing are actually massive anti-Semites who hate Jewish people. Again, massive big brain logic. Like saying to an Irish Protestant who disagrees with the state of Northern Ireland, like he hates all Protestants or he hates all British people and stuff like that. This logic doesn't hold up. Zionism is a settler colonial ideology, which has of course evolved into like multiple different strands. Just opposing an ideology that is used to justify apartheid and ethnic cleansing doesn't mean you hate Jewish people, right? And most people can easily divorce that, right? How much time do I spend on my channel fighting against anti-Semitism, showing how anti-Semitic popular figures often are, like Jordan Peterson with these conspiracy theories, talking about how much anti-Semitism and anti-communism have gone hand in hand over the last like 100 years and stuff like that. I spend so much time on my channel dedicated to fighting far-right ideologies which target Jews. Also, as a guy who has a family history in Ireland, I understand like what apartheid and colonialism looks like, and that's how I view Israel, right? This guy right here who wrote this article thinks I'm an anti-Semite. And he also thinks hundreds of thousands of Jews who also don't agree with the state of Israel are anti-Semitic as well. So it goes on to say, how can all of this be? How is it that a well-known and well-loved American actress, Jenna Ortega, can link to a site that calls for Jews to return to their status as a stateless nation, especially at a time when even open Kanye West-style Jew hatred is on the rise? How can Ortega post blood libel? It would be far less troubling if I could believe that Ortega had something against the Jews if she simply hated us. That is highly unlikely. The more likely answer is ignorance. Ortega posted the anti-Israel link as part of a pinned tweet series with links to a variety of human rights causes. She's clearly read widely on humanitarian issues, but not deeply into any particular one of them. If she did, she would surely feel torn by the cognitive dissonance of posting a link implicitly supporting Hamas, while on Instagram praising Planned Parenthood and the heroic women of Iran. And given Ortega's seeming support for the LGBT plus community, it's hard to imagine she would really want to get rid of the state. Gay Palestinians must flee in order to avoid persecution and murder. He's mad people accuse Israelis of pinkwashing while pinkwashing himself right there. And also, I love how he says Jenna Ortega has cognitive dissonance, while this guy is a pro-Zionist who's also pro-Ukraine and is against the Russian occupation, despite the Russian occupation reflecting certain elements of the Israeli occupation of Palestine. That's cognitive dissonance for you. On the pinkwashing angle, what does this guy want, right? Should we support Israel's existence, expansion, especially when it's just elected its most like far-right government ever? And we should do that because gay rights are better in Israel and not Palestine, so actually Israel should just colonize and own all Palestinian territory. Like, Palestinians deserve a death sentence for not being good on gay rights or something. So this is the problem with people like Ortega, the people who are kind and good and intelligent and well-meaning. When Kanye says he loves Hitler, that's a problem. He brings out the open Jew haters the way the darkness brings out cockroaches. But normal people easily see that Kanye says evil things and should be scorned. Such isn't the case with people like Ortega, who stumbled into transmitting Jew hatred to an army of fans who outnumbered all the world's Jews. I focused here entirely on Jenna Ortega because she's an extreme example. There are many others who have taken on Hamas's talking points, like Bella Hadid and Emma Watson, John Oliver and Trevor Noah, who seems to believe it possible to determine which side in the war is just solely by counting casualties. None of the entertainers mentioned above have called for the elimination of the state of Israel. Only Ortega, who actually seems nicer than the others, has done it. She seems to be one of the most genuinely well-meaning people, and yet she has been one to post the most genuinely evil piece of anti-Zionist propaganda and broadcast it to more people than there are Jews on earth. These people seriously love to downplay Kanye West while vilifying genuinely principled people. If this guy doesn't know, Kanye West is one of the most famous people on the planet who has opened a can of worms where even people in like Ben Shapiro's audience are turning on Ben Shapiro, saying that he just hates Kanye because he's speaking the truth, right? And you're trying to make me believe that Kanye West saying this explicit stuff is actually not as bad as what Jenna Ortega posted, because, well, most good and rational people don't believe Kanye West. He's a crazy man. How about to loads of people who are celebrating Kanye West saying that stuff, especially the America First far right, because they say, well, he's saying what we want to say and he's legitimizing it because he's so influential, now more people are believing it. Yeah, sure, maybe the stuff about Hitler is too extreme for a lot of people. The other stuff about them controlling various industries, the record industry, movies and stuff like that, people like him saying it, and people are listening to him saying it. So anyone who tries to downplay Kanye while vilifying people for posting one link on their Twitter are totally insane. But that just shows you the world of extreme neocon Zionists and how they view it, right? People like me, we're the real anti-Semites. People like Kanye, yeah, they're bad, but everyone thinks they're crazy. I'm far more dangerous because I whip up Jew hatred, apparently, by criticizing Zionism and saying the state of Israel isn't legitimate. And along the people who say the state of Israel isn't legitimate are Orthodox Jewish people. So they're clearly also anti-Semites who are more dangerous than Kanye West, aren't they? What people like this are trying to do is trying to basically use more like liberal sensibilities about like anti-racism or fighting against anti-Semitism and weaponize it against them. He's saying, well, Jenna Ortega's a good person. She's empathetic and kind. This is an accident. She's clearly not well read enough. And if someone reached out to her, like the ADL, for example, maybe she would learn and maybe she would start supporting Zionism and demonizing the Palestinians and basically saying, well, they deserve oppression because they're against LGBT people. That's what he's hoping here. And that's what the guy who messaged my boss calling me a racist also hoped for. They're like, well, you're against racism, aren't you? So clearly you cannot criticize the state of Israel because according to this guy, actually criticizing the state of Israel, criticizing Zionism and saying the state of Israel shouldn't exist is actually the most anti-Semitic thing you can do. Now, this guy tried to take a victory lap because Jenna Ortega removed the pinned post. Now, she didn't remove the tweets. She just removed the pinned post. And this is what he said in a follow-up. Jenna Ortega did the right thing. Will others? The intent was never to demonize the actress, which he actually did by saying she was an extremist who posted Jew hatred. As both articles note, she seems to be a decent person who would honestly tell anyone who asked that she deplores Jew hatred. That's what makes her hate so terrifying. The hate was hers, only because when you post something on social media, it's yours. That Ortega is actually a good person fooled by slick propaganda made her post all the more frightening. These neoconservative pro-Israeli supporters are legit the most fragile man babies. It reminds me of that Emma Watson tweet, which he referenced, where she just posted, solidarity is a verb, and you see like some free Palestine flags. And then the ambassador in Israel said 10 points from Gryffindor for Emma Watson being an anti-Semite. So just the mere act of supporting Palestine to some of these people is anti-Semitism, right? So we should just support Israel continually colonizing the region, stealing Palestinian homes, and basically destroying them or letting settlers steal their homes and live in them. We just shouldn't call that out ever, right? Any support for Palestine is actually anti-Semitism. This isn't a point about like Daniel or the article, but about Ben Shapiro and others. What was pretty sick about this, if you keep demonizing anti-Zionists and stuff as like the real face of anti-Semitism, if you keep focusing on that while downplaying Kanye West, what's going to happen, like Ben Shapiro found out of his comments on his Instagram page, is that people aren't actually going to take you seriously when you start calling out anti-Semitism because you've made them think the only anti-Semitism that matters is people criticizing Israel. The Ben Shapiro calling Rashida Tlaib anti-Semitic or Ilhan Omar, they don't mind that so much. But when you start saying to Kanye West, what you said is beyond the pale, then they start turning on him because you're fostering an audience who actually don't care. Like how much in history and even today is anti-leftism and anti-communism often a front for anti-Semitism, right? So George Soros is meant to be like the mastermind behind the Democrats. But of course, a lot of people just use this because they want to target a Jewish billionaire they think is controlling the world affairs. And like cultural Marxism, for example, Jordan Peterson, right? He met with Netanyahu recently. He went to Israel recently. He supports Israel, right? Cultural Marxism is a fascist conspiracy theory born out of anti-Semitism, which basically piggybacked on Judeo-Bolshevism from Germany during the 1930s, right? But Jordan Peterson isn't an anti-Semite because he supports Israel to these people, despite pushing a conspiracy theory where people just need to look into it to see that the root of it is anti-Semitism. You're talking about Jewish intellectuals of the Frankfurt School who fled Germany in the 1930s and came to America and then became part of this anti-Semitic conspiracy that they're promoting communism to fundamentally destroy America. It sounds exactly like Judeo-Bolshevism. So I'm really sick of this double standard, and I hope people like Jenna Ortega, despite removing the pinned tweet, take no notice of people like this, because I feel like increasingly with younger generations, they're fighting a losing battle. They're calling anyone who criticizes Israel, anyone who supports Palestine, well, you're anti-Semitic, but Jordan Peterson, he's alright actually because he supports Israel despite promoting an insanely anti-Semitic conspiracy theory throughout his whole career. Evangelical Christians, they're not so bad. They support Israel despite doing it for racist reasons. But yeah, Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar, they're the true threat to Jewish people. All I would say to people who are unsure about speaking against Israeli apartheid, so I'm like technically like a well-educated guy, right? I have a history degree, I have a master's degree in international relations, I've covered a lot of stuff to do with Israel. I'd say Middle Eastern history and Middle Eastern politics is an area of expertise for me and stuff. And I would say Daniel realizes how complicated these issues are, and often people like Daniel use this to scare people. They say, you don't understand how complicated it is, you don't understand all the history, therefore you can't make a comment on it, and if I throw allegations like anti-Semitism at you, you're definitely not going to talk about it. All I say to people is you don't need to know the complexities of the last 70 something years of history of the Middle East and Israel. All you need to do is just look at what's happening in Israel today. Look at the rise of the Israeli far right. Look at what they're doing to Palestinians. Look what they're doing to Palestinian homes. Look how they're constantly destroying their culture and ethnically cleansing them. And you will know it's only right, if you're a good person, to speak up against it. Just like apartheid in South Africa in the 1980s, and just like other issues like Ireland in the past and like stuff to do with America, you know injustice when you see it. You know it's right to speak up for Native Americans in the face of persecution and colonization by Canada, by America, and even in terms of like what everyone supports at the moment, Ukraine. You see what's happening in Ukraine, you see an invasion from Russia, you know Russia is in the wrong. When Israel colonizes people and occupies people, why don't you call that out as well? Are you scared of being called an anti-Semite? Are you scared you don't know the history? I'm pretty sure you probably don't know the history of Ukraine and Russia and the complexities of that either, but you know it's wrong. So you know with your gut, when you see what Israel are doing, it's wrong. So just trust that, and trust that people like Daniel are bad faith actors. And as we've seen, this guy is a neoconservative who thinks America isn't fundamentally racist. And I'm meant to take it seriously when he says someone like Jenna Ortega is promoting anti-Semitism with those 2 tweets. Anyway, that is it for the video. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments. And if you made it this far, thank you for watching.